Today's video tip, we're going to talk about something that, again, like most things in fishing, become very confusing for a lot of people who don't really do a lot of it or read a lot about it. I'm going to talk about rod actions today, and I've heard this misexplained thousands of times. The problem starts when people confuse action and power in a rod. Now, power in a rod, which is rated, ultralight, light, medium light, medium heavy, heavy, or extra heavy, or even double X heavy, depending on what kind of rods you're using, that indicates the power or the force it takes to move an object. That has nothing to do with the taper of the blank. That is all about bigger fish, heavier rods, heavier cover, heavier rods. This is why you see bass fishermen using medium heavy and heavy rods to catch 3 and 4 pound fish, because they live in logs, beaver dams, pencil reeds, lily pads, all stuff that can impede you getting them out, so they use that heavier rods. Open water, you can get away with lighter rods, so mediums, medium lights, and ultralights ultimately for panfish. So how does action play into all this? Action indicates the taper or the bend in the rod. Now, whether you're using spinning rods or you're using casting rods, they start at slow, like a fly rod, some slower action fly rods, or a noodle rod, very parabolic. Almost you see them bend from the handle all the way around. And then they go moderate, slow, moderate, which typically happens in cranking rods, moderate, fast, fast, and extra fast. Extra fast rods tend to bend only at the tip. So what does this give you as an angler? This is going to give you better casting accuracy because you don't have a big sloppy rod bending. All the energy is focused into the tip section. It's also going to give you better hook sets because you don't have to pull so far back to the point where that rod blank actually loads up and the hook set actually, the line goes tight, the rod goes tight, and then you can drive the hook home. As you move down to fast, you'll see the rod start bending a little further down. Oftentimes, 4 or 5 guides down the blank is where the bend will stop. As you go to moderate, you start seeing it more around the midpoint of the rod. And this is where we see a lot of crankbait rods. So here's the big difference. If you're a crankbait guy and you're cranking heavy cover, like hard cover, not soft cover like weed, hard cover, rocks, wood. This is where you're gonna want a moderate rod. You want something with a little more give. And the reason being is that more give is gonna allow that bait to deflect and not bury the hooks off the structure. If you're a weed cranking guy, I tell people move to a moderate fast action rod. You want that little bit faster action, that little bit crisper blank, so that you can snap that bait out of the weeds. It makes a huge difference because there's nothing worse than throwing a crankbait way out there, cranking down a weed line, getting a glob of weeds on it, and then you can't rip it off, so you're forced to reel it back, spook the area. Whereas if you had a little bit of a crisper, faster action rod, you could snap that bait out and get it running true again, get that wobble happening, and then you're all set. For a bass fisherman or a multi-species fisherman, even stuff that I've experienced come saltwater fishing, moderate fast, fast, and extra fast are the rod actions. And these are actions. It's the taper in the blank, the way the rod bends, that you're going to be looking for. The easy way to break them down when you're going to a store, if you're going to be fishing, and this is a general rule, but if you're going to be fishing bottom contact stuff where the rod position when you hold it is in that 9 to 11 o'clock position, you should be looking for fast or extra fast rods. If you've got your rod pointing down and you're straight reeling, crankbaits, reaction baits, stuff like that, that's when you can go moderate fast or even moderate because you have zero slack in your line. The difference between the two techniques, when your rod's like this, you have a loop of line. So having a stiffer rod that's gonna lock into its hook set position faster is gonna benefit you because you're removing all that slack on the hook set and you need to lock up by the time you get up here. Whereas when your rod's down and you're straight reeling, having that little bit softer rod, there's zero slack between your bait and the rod. That softer rod is gonna allow the fish to swim up behind the bait, engulf it better, get more of it in their mouths, and allow you to pull and really get that hook in. But because you're using treble hooks in most instances with a rod like this, when you're cranking, that softer rod will also absorb when the fish power runs by the boat. And that'll equal more landed fish for you. Hopefully this one helps, guys. Share this video. We'd love to get more people hooked on fishing, catching more importantly, because when you start catching, you really start to enjoy it a whole lot more. Take it easy, guys.